Welcome to SBME Interfaces. Our goal with this show is to introduce you to the people that interface with biomedical engineering, from students and faculty to staff and industry, and everyone in between. BME is a broad field that encompasses so many different perspectives, journeys, skill sets, and backgrounds, and we are excited to share them all with you.
Today, we're very excited to have Dr. Gail Murphy with us. She's Professor of Computer Science and Vice President Research and Innovation at UBC. She's a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and Fellow of the Association for Computing Machinery. She co-founded and is currently board member of Tasktop Technologies. Completed her undergrad at the University of Alberta, worked for a few years as a software engineer in industry, and then decided to pursue graduate school at the University of Washington before joining UBC as a faculty member. Her research focuses on improving the productivity of software developers and knowledge workers by providing the necessary tools to identify, manage, and coordinate the information that matters most to their work. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you. Good morning.
So Gail, I just wanted to ask you how this last year has impacted your work at the VPRI office. What were some of the major challenges that you faced, and especially as things moved online and as we're sort of hoping now eventually to get out of that?
Yeah, well, like for everybody, it was quite the year. It started for us last March, as it did for many people, and you know, most of us who get involved in helping to provide a great research environment, the last thing we ever imagined ourselves doing is having to work to try to ask people to not be on campus and to actually stop their research activities for some period of time. So we curtailed research activities at UBC's Vancouver and Okanagan campuses at the end of March in 2020. Obviously, that caused a lot of distress for our community. And we worked pretty hard to put in a process to make sure that COVID research, critical research, research that just had to continue could go on through the time period where we had less people actually able to be on our campuses. And obviously there's reach of that beyond just what happens in laboratories on a campus. We had scholars that were unable to access archives. The library was not as available. People's field work was cut short. And perhaps the hardest part of dealing with that was knowing that graduate students had their programs being really interrupted, and postdoctoral fellows that are often on a short time period had that occurring to them. Our early career scholars who have pressures on them to start producing research in a new environment, they were all being really hard hit by COVID and trying to figure out how they could continue their research activities forward in this kind of new environment. And that continues. You know, we have more and more people on campus. That started back in June. But for a lot of research areas, if you do in-person experiments, it's still highly constrained what you're able to do. So I'm really proud of our team. I think that we responded quickly. We did our best to be responsive to everyone, to help the faculties and departments get COVID safety plans in place. But clearly it's an area where we all have to continue to work forward until we get back to whatever the new normal will be.
For sure. And on top of that, you have new faculty where we had in the school, and they took a year hit, and kudos to them for pivoting and doing what they did.
Exactly.
So going a bit way back, you were in industry for a little bit after your undergrad, and then what motivated you to pursue graduate school?
Well, a little bit of a family situation. You know, my spouse was finishing a PhD, and we were looking for a place that he could do a postdoc. But also a point in my career where, having built software for 5 years, I was a little frustrated by some of the continual ways that we did it that were not optimal, and so was interested in going back to grad school and kind of upgrading kind of my knowledge of where the technologies and where the field was at, as well as have an opportunity to dig in and try to make it better.
That's great.
What drew you to UBC to pursue an academic career?
So that was difficult choice in a way. Finishing my PhD, I was still very drawn to industry and looked a lot at industrial research labs, as well as the academic environment. we had been in Vancouver before. We loved Vancouver. And so when an opportunity came up at UBC, it seemed like a great place to be able to pursue both research and teaching at a high level, and had an environment in which the people were welcoming, and it was clearly a place that was kind of up and coming and was about to explode onto the world scene.
That's great. So tell us about starting Tasktop Technologies, and did you always have an entrepreneurial bug in you, or?
Yeah, I think I did. I actually had a company when I was a graduate student as well. So I did my graduate studies at the University of Washington, which was a very innovative and entrepreneurial and continues to be department. So many of the graduate students had launched various companies. It was kind of the days of the early web search engines and things like that. And so had done a company at that point that didn't work out so well, but maybe that was a good learning experience as we went along. And about 2005, had a PhD student in the lab, Mick Kirsten, who had been an undergrad at UBC and done an undergraduate thesis with me as well. And we started tossing around ideas and finally came up with an idea that we thought could really change the world, frankly. And so that's really what got us motivated to say, first of all, how do we build this out and actually research it in an academic environment? How do we take this and then make it available to the world? So our very first step in that was a plugin for a development environment called Eclipse. The plugin was called Mylar because it was meant to filter information blindness that could happen with all the information that appears on a screen. And of course, the Mylar film helps you look at eclipses. So we built that. Mick was an incredible engineer, incredible scientist, and managed to attract a lot of usage of that particular plugin. It became a default part of one of these large development environments called Eclipse. And with that, we had always organized it so we knew that we could build some closed source components on top of the open source academic core that we had built as part of his PhD thesis. So we had actually lined up lots of discussions about what we could do in a commercial way. We had an NSERC I2I grant ready to go for commercializing out the particular technology. Mick defended his thesis on a Friday and we incorporated on Monday. So we had a plan, executed on that plan, and it's been an incredible experience to be able to take technology out into the world. It's pivoted a little bit from those early roots. We've learned a lot along the way, and it's been great to see the company really grow and flourish.
If I can ask a follow-up, one thing we've heard and noticed in the biotech sector is recruiting good talent and retaining talent. Do you find that in your field and in your area?
I would say yes and no. So absolutely, when you're talking about software companies, talent is it, right? That's really what you're basing a lot of your company on, is the ability for your talent to be able to create products that are new, that are innovative, and that are really solid and robust, that they have the engineering skills as well to take it forward at scale. I think Vancouver has been a great place to attract talent, both from our local universities and from outside. And have been really pleased to see that a lot of the talent has chosen to stay with the company over 14 years, even though they've had lots of opportunities along the way to consider other things to do.
Great.
So you're entrepreneurial, and you obviously have a desire to teach as well, and then you also pursue the VPRI role. So tell us about a typical week there. Do you have time at all to pursue everything?
Yeah, so typical weeks don't exist. That's kind of what's fun about it. There's always different issues that are arising, and what motivated me to step into the VPRI role is just the fact that UBC is a great place, and we need to continue to provide an even better environment for our researchers to be able to come to have amazing careers and to be able to do it in a way that allows them to pursue multiple passions, right? That they don't have to spend 150% of their time at their research bench, because we provided them an environment that allows them to be able to ensure that they're kind of full people at the same time. So a typical week simply doesn't exist, right? There's lots of meetings, and you know, as a computer scientist and maybe somebody who always enjoyed you know, time behind the keyboard and the screen to create and code, the hardest part has been getting used to lots of meetings. I used to say that I like to be in behind my computer, but after a year of doing you know, various video conferencing meetings, maybe not so much anymore. I do miss the human to human interaction, but usually a lot of meetings, a lot of evolving issues that might be going on nationally that we want to make sure UBC is well positioned for, whether it's grant competitions or making sure that the UBC voice is at the table for, you know, new initiatives that might be happening in the social sciences, or new policies that might be coming out, like research data management just came out, and making sure that we get that message out internally, but we're also representing UBC's views on it externally. So a lot of the weeks like that. I still have a research group. So my meeting before this was with one of my my graduate students, and still really enjoy being able to dig into the research community and kind of keep excited about research that way.
If I could, you said making a really good environment for people to become whole people. This is kind of a passion of mine. What does that mean to you? What is that great environment that kind of inspires people to do everything that they're capable of?
Yeah, well, I think we all have to try and define that together, because I'm sure my definition is not what everyone's definition would be. I think the more that we can ensure that we have supports there, whether it's people to read your grants before they go out so that they're proofed, or somebody to connect and have a conversation with about what might work in a grant, or whether it's our ethics group and making sure that we have as streamlined a process as we can that meets federal government requirements, but allows you to get your ethics certificate done quickly because you have an idea and a student, and you want to get something going. Whether it's shared research platforms for especially more of the biomedical areas, but also what we're doing with advanced research computing for digital humanities. I think it's all of those pieces is trying to make sure that that machinery, for lack of a better word, works, and that we're providing opportunities through some of the grant programs that we run internally to prepare people for those external competitions that we hope are coming. And to ensure that for things like the research facilities support grants competition we run, that they can actually apply for some funding to keep their equipment going. So trying to reduce all of those little friction points so that they can spend as much of their time as possible on the things that they love to do, and not have it be that they have to spend, you know, hours and hours of their own time in the lab, perhaps fixing a piece of equipment or proofreading, you know, their grant for the 45th time because you don't want to have errors in it. So just trying to understand what are those friction points, what are those points where people want some opportunity to perhaps pursue interdisciplinary collaborations that they might not have done if they weren't able to hire a grant facilitator or do things like that.
Did you find, having started a company and sort of needing some leadership skills there, that helped translate into your role in VPRI?
I'm sure it did. I don't know if I've really reflected upon exactly what does. I would say that starting a company during a recession, which pretty much happened to us because we started in 2007, we got very good at optimizing the resources that we were given. So I think from that point of view of really trying to strategically look at problems and say, okay, we've got, you know, X amount of resource, where can we best place it? I'm sure I learned things through that process.
That's great.
So being senior leadership at the university, how have you found that role? Was it everything that you expected from it? Have there been surprises, challenges?
I think in any role that you take, there's always surprises that hit you that you never knew it was part of the role. I would honestly say I kind of, you know, was Associate Dean Research and Science for about 3.5 years before I stepped in as an interim associate vice president research at that time. And I think when I made the step from being a faculty member to being an associate dean, I had no idea what that would really mean. When I went from being an associate dean into the VPRI portfolio, even though I had been connected with it through meetings, I had really no idea what the portfolio really did. And I think that continues as you take on more and more kinds of roles. Probably what surprised me the most, but should not have surprised me, is how much these roles are really about forming relationships internally, but also really importantly, forming relationships through the province, through the federal government, through other organizations that UBC is a part of, and really learning how to draw information into UBC and get that out from those organizations, but to also keep a touch as much as you can with what's going on across all the disciplines at UBC, to be able to represent those appropriately when you're speaking to somebody, for instance, in the federal government.
So how do you see the School of Biomedical Engineering's role in sort of the overall research and innovation mandate at UBC?
So I think it's really exciting that we have SBME now, because it really starts to live that kind of interdisciplinary collaborations that I think many people want to do. And it's not always easy to find the right vehicle or the right place to be able to do those. What could be more exciting these days than being at the interface in many ways between medicine and engineering, when we know there's going to be so much need for different kinds of engineered devices, engineered ways of doing testing in new ways. I know the school's been involved in new kinds of COVID tests, for instance, building ventilators, right? That whole scope. I think we know that we have an aging population. We know that we are going to need to do a lot more aids for individuals as they age. So no matter what part of the population you look at, you know that you're going to need that kind of collaboration that exists in SBME between the engineering side of how to build things at scale and the biomedical side of understanding how we work as humans inside, and how to make sure that we are resilient against so many of the challenges that we know that we face through disease and other environmental effects.
So if I can ask a follow-up, is there other opportunities of these sort of marriages or partnerships do you see with other, like two faculties coming together and down the road, or do you have
Well,
a
I don't know if
list?
I would try to say what faculties come together, but I think it's one of the reasons that we run the research excellence clusters competition at Vancouver and the eminence competitions at Okanagan campus, for allowing our researchers to express where do they see interdisciplinary collaborations that can really lead to new insights into problems. So I really firmly believe that it starts to come from the research community itself, that they have to define where are the places. And that's really a lot what happened with SBME. There had been interactions and collaborations for many years before the school was formed. So I think where we'll see those changes happening will come from the research community and our teaching community, saying there's a need to bring these two areas together, not only for the research problems we're looking at, but for graduate education and for undergraduate education.
Yeah, and we're fortunate to have 3 of the clusters now under the school umbrella, and that's been a great sort of interactions that's happening all the time.
We'll call that an open invitation for researchers to help build the future and define the future. On the subject of the future, what really excites you about the future for research and innovation at UBC right now? Like, where do you hope it goes next?
That's a great question. There's just, well, the first thing I hope is that we get everybody back into being able to do the research that they want to do. That's just first and foremost, getting the access to field work, getting in-person experiments going again. You know, that's kind of where a lot of our energy is at, is trying to understand how do we facilitate that. In terms of internally, what are we doing for the community? Well, the first thing I would say is an open invitation to get in touch and let me know what we're not doing, because we really want to be responsive to the community. But some things that excite us, obviously, the interdisciplinary collaborations we're trying to foster through the research excellence clusters we just talked about. In the humanities, that's come about as a public humanities hub on both the Vancouver and Okanagan campus. Excited about that. I'm excited about what we're doing for shared research platforms to try to take those places where researchers have come together around some resource. Often it's laboratory equipment that's very expensive, but it can also be other kinds of resources. Maybe it's a particular kind of archive of information that needs to be maintained in some way. And we know that the programs we have available from the government aren't great at helping to maintain that over time. So how do we provide some funding and some structure that allows us to make the most out of the equipment that we bring in, of the information that we gather, and do so in a way that's sustainable, so that we don't have to just go buy a new piece of equipment, but we can get all of the life time we can out of the equipment we have. So excited about those. I'm excited about our Dimensions program that we're doing in relation with the Equity and Inclusion Office. So Dimensions is a federal program of which UBC is one of the 17 participating institutions. And we're trying to understand, how do we make our research environment be welcoming to people from all kinds of backgrounds? And that is easier said than done, because we need to do a lot of work, as we know, in gathering data, but also in understanding the barriers that individuals have faced. And if we understand better those barriers, perhaps we can come together as a community to make sure that UBC is welcoming to individuals from all backgrounds to go into all kinds of disciplines. So also really excited about those efforts that we're doing within the office, and what we're doing to support the Indigenous Strategic Plan by helping researchers to understand how to create appropriate partnerships with Indigenous communities, to help communities interact with UBC, and to see if we can forge new ways to be able to do collaborative research that is truly meaningful for both parties.
Do you feel that one silver lining of maybe this remote work is people being more open to collaborate more remotely and using different technologies? Because as you know, either by design or unconsciously, academia has a history of siloing, especially, you mentioned equipment, core facilities is one area that comes up. So how do you see us breaking those down more and more? Do we centralize more items such as core facilities at the campus? Do we encourage the next generation of faculty we hire that, open source and open working together? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think there's a balance, right? I don't think that we can just provide central services. Those have to be deeply connected with the academic community. So where we can have academic steering committees, academic directors, and put that together with some sort of central support structures, I think that we can create something that could really be beneficial for the UBC community of how we work and how our community is unique, perhaps, in some ways. With the remote work, what's really been great is being able to collaborate more with people across campus, right? Have a meeting and have everybody join. And with the Okanagan campus, bridging between the two campuses a bit better. What I think we're lacking is, and I will say this as a software person, our tools are still not great for collaborating remotely. And I miss being on a whiteboard with my students, right? Being able to sort of draw something out in a really fluid, collaborative way. So I think the next 6 to 8 months are going to be quite a change again. I think it took people a little bit of time to pivot online, but we're going to have to probably pivot hybrid, right? Where some people might be online and some people might be in person. And I don't think we've ever figured out how to do that very well.
Yeah.
So I think there'll be lots of new challenges in how do we maybe bring tools to bear that help people do that remotely, and also have people fluidly interacting in person at the same time. So it's going to be pretty exciting to see how that works out. And I think we're all going to have to find some more patience again to figure out how to make the people on the screen feel as first class as the people in the room.
Yeah, there's a couple business opportunities there, and both software and hardware, I would say.
I would say that's
Yeah.
probably true.
You made a really good point too, is making the people that are remote feel as important as those in the room. I was just thinking about this last night about how like these interactions right now, like you're in my home, you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit more intimate. We know a little bit more about each other just because of that. And so what do we lose with that? And then more importantly, how do we feel uncomfortable when a meeting is occurring with all of our colleagues there? And we're not. Anyway, on to a little bit more lighter. This is an interest area of mine. I learned somewhere researching you that you like to go back to the Jane Austen novels every now and again. So which is your favorite and why?
Oh, well, you're reaching into the depths and darks, I guess. Yeah, I struggled when I went to university about whether I wanted to be a computer scientist, a physicist, or an English. So definitely literature is something I go back to. I'd have to say Pride and Prejudice, probably because, you know, Elizabeth Bennet, when you read her as maybe a young woman, you just see this spirit and ability to question and an ability to have your own mind and really make a system work for you, shall we say. So I would definitely go back to Pride and Prejudice and Elizabeth Bennet.
I like that, good answer.
Yeah, Miguel's our resident writer and does other things on the side. So, and as you can see from his back, that's just a quarter of his readings. That he
Yeah.
does.
I'm trying to make out the titles on his books. So.
Yeah, most of my apartment is this. Is really what it is. It's like no room for family.
So I know from previous, Gail, that you swim, and so how do you unwind from your hectic schedule?
Yeah, I used to swim. That's kind of been curtailed for the last year or so. I've taken up spin cycling and getting out on my road bike at times when the weather's nice. So that's always a good time. And I think the whole family has decided that if you're going to be home all the time, you need to learn how to cook a bit better. So we've been trying to do a little bit more work on actually making meals that are perhaps a little more extensive and exotic than we would have before.
Sure. So I'll ask one more sort of fun, deep question, and then we'll let you go after Miguel takes us home. Is if you could tell your 20-year-old self anything, what would it be?
Well, interesting question, because we have two boys that are 20 at the moment. So I guess we hear ourselves saying this all the time. We just tell them to follow what they're really interested in, to not worry too much about what's 5 years from now, but to take time and study the things that they're really interested in. And that will take them to interesting places in the future.
Absolutely.
Great advice.
Yeah, excellent advice. All right, so last but not least then, is there any particular initiative or project or endeavor that you're overseeing right now that you're really excited about and you would like everybody else to get excited about too?
Well, I think, for all of us, it's just making a great research culture and environment at UBC. So how can we come out of this pandemic and be a place that really listens to each other, welcomes each other, and tries to make everybody successful?
Well said.
Yeah, to me, it's always people are intelligent. We're in an academic environment, but I really like how you focus, Gail, on the culture and the EDI aspect. Those are critical. That will be a differentiator. Leadership. Those are really what make a differentiator between us and another academic institution. So we know you're extremely busy. You probably have another 50 Zoom calls after this interview, but we really appreciate speaking to you. It's always a pleasure, and really excited of all the things that you and your team are doing, and can't wait to see more exciting stuff.
Well, thank you. It was a fun conversation. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.